Hey there, and welcome back to another B.Hooked tutorial. And in this episode, I have the pleasure of teaching you how to crochet one of my latest patterns, the Fall Glam Crochet Lace Hat. I'm really excited about this one. You'll only need one ball of Peyton's lace sequin yarn in your favorite colorway and a size 6.5mm hook. Now you can find more photos, the pattern information, and the full supplies list over on my website. I'll have that linked here in the video and in the description below. You can also get there by typing in bhookedcrochet.com/lace hat. All right, now let's dive into the tutorial. So the first thing we want to do is create a slip knot. Place that loop on your hook, and then we'll chain 3. Now what we need to do is find our first chain, and we're going to join with a slip stitch there so that we can make a ring. Now if you're comfortable with the magic ring method, by all means you can go ahead and start this hat in that way. So I've slip stitched there to my first chain to create a ring, although it doesn't look much like a ring, does it? So what we'll do is we'll just grab the two edges and see how it kind of looks like a pretzel? This little bottom hole there, that is the middle of the ring. I'll stick my finger in there to keep track of it. All right, so we're going to work a lot with double crochet stitches and double crochet clusters. We'll start off round 1 with a chain 3, which does count as our first double crochet. Now I'll make 11 double crochets in the middle of this ring. So right where I've got my finger, I'll wrap the yarn, stick it through the middle, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. Now we'll keep doing that around the ring for a total of 12 double crochet. Remember that chain 3 counts as a stitch. Now when you get to the end of your first round, we'll join with the slip stitch to our third chain. So now you're probably thinking, Brittany, I have a hole in the top of my hat. And yes, you're right. Whenever we do this chain method of starting in the round, we are usually left with a little hole, but there's a really simple fix. Now if you're adding a palm to the top of your hat, you don't have to worry about this fix because the palm will cover that. But after we get a few more rounds, we'll work through this really simple adjustment to completely get rid of that ring. All right, so moving on to round number 2, we will chain 3, which does count as a double crochet. And for this round, we'll still work with just double crochet stitches, and we're going to increase. So in other words, we need to make 2 double crochets into every stitch. So we ended with 12 stitches. From that last round, we'll have a total of 24. Now since this chain 3 counts as a double crochet, I'm going to pair this one up with another stitch at the end of the round. So I'll find my first post right here, work my double crochet in that stitch, and a second one. Two double crochets in the next, and I'll repeat that all the way around. And once again, when we get to the end of the round, I'll show you how to pair up that chain 3 with another double crochet. Now when you get to the end of your round, if you've been counting along, you should have a total of 23 stitches. We still have to pair our chain 3 with a stitch, and what I like to do is just work my double crochet in the same space where that chain 3 is coming from. Then I'll find my third chain and join with a slip stitch there to finish the round. Now moving on to round number 3, we're going to chain 3. And this will count as our first double crochet of this round, and this time we will continue to increase, but the frequency at which we're increasing will change. So in this last round, we increased every stitch. For round 3, we'll increase every other stitch. So we'll start the round with an increase. So find your first post and work 2 double crochets there to increase. Then in the next stitch, we'll just work 1 double crochet. And that's our repeat. Increase in the next, in other words, 2 double crochets in the next stitch, followed by 1 double crochet. We'll repeat that all the way around. And now when you get to the end of round number 3, you should have a total of 36 stitches. And you should have ended with 2 double crochets in your last stitch. That's how you know you're on the right track. Then we'll find that third chain. We'll join with a slip stitch there to finish the round. Now moving forward, we want to increase for 3 more rounds. Remember, the increase is just where we add 2 double crochets into 1 for this particular pattern, and we change the frequency every round. So in round number 2, we increased every stitch. 3, we increased every other. So in rounds 4, we're going to increase every 2 stitches. For round 5, we're going to increase every 3 stitches, and for round 6, we'll increase every 4 stitches. Now at this point, I also want to point your attention to the written instructions where you'll find the details on rounds 4, 5, and 6. What I'd like for you to do at this point is go ahead and finish crocheting through round 6, and when we get to that point, we'll meet back up and we'll talk about what to do next. All right, now once you have your increases complete, your hat will look something like this. It's basically just a circle with double crochets. Now what we can do from this point is work on the sides of our hat where we don't have to increase anymore. So we'll start these rounds with a chain 3, and again this chain 3 counts as a double crochet. And then we'll just make 1 double crochet into every stitch. Now I want to avoid the place where this chain 3 is coming from because again that counts as a stitch. So I'll find my first post right there and I'll work my double crochet in that stitch. And from there the rest is easy. Just make 1 double crochet into every stitch. And when you get back to the end of your round, like we've done before, we'll join with the slip stitch to our 3rd chain at the end of this round and the following rounds. All right, so at this point we've worked all the way through round number 9 and we're ready to start on that cluster stitch pattern. So to do that, we're going to start with the chain 2. This is going to be part of our clustered stitch. We want to make it in the same place where we joined with a slip stitch to finish off that previous round. We'll wrap the yarn, insert your hook into that same place, that same stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, then yarn over and pull through 2. Now leave those loops on your hook. You'll yarn over once again, insert it into the same place, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2. Now we have 3 loops on our hook. We can go ahead and yarn over and pull through all 3. And so with that, we've made a clustered stitch. Now the next thing we want to do is chain 1. We're going to skip the next stitch and work a cluster in the next. So yarn over, insert your hook into that next stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2. It's going to be a little different than that first one because we had that chain 2 to start things off. We'll do that again. And once more. Now this time we'll have 4 loops on our hook. We'll yarn over and pull through all 4. To finish that cluster. Now that's the cluster that you'll be working throughout the remainder of this round. We just have that one difference at the beginning because of that chain 2. So your repeat is to chain 1, skip a stitch, cluster in the next. Now, once you've reached the end of that round, you're going to find your first cluster, locate that stitch or that V that's right at the top. We're going to join with a slip stitch there to finish off round 10. Now what we'll do from this point on is work 3 more rounds where we use this clustered stitch, but we want to make sure that the stitches are positioned in between the clusters from the previous round. So what I'll do is I'll insert my hook into that space between those next 2 clusters and I'll slip stitch. Then I've got myself set up. Now from here, the repeat is the same as in round number 10. Now that you've completed that clustered repeated section, we have 4 rounds of these cluster stitches, and all we need to do is work on the band to finish our hat. We're going to do something a little different and a little simple here for the band. We're going to transition now to working with half double crochet stitches. So to begin this next round, we're going to chain 2. We are going to count that as a half double crochet stitch. And then the next thing I'll do is work a half double crochet in the space between the first and second cluster. Since this chain 2 is counting as a stitch and it's coming from this cluster, that's why we're sort of skipping over to this empty space. Then we'll half double crochet in the next cluster. So I'm just working right in the top there. A half double crochet in the space between the next 2, and that's our repeat. We need to make 1 half double crochet for every cluster and 1 half double crochet in between every cluster. Okay, so now when you make it back around till you've reached your chain 2 here, we're going to join with a slip stitch to our second chain. We're doing that again because that chain 2 counts as a stitch. So we need to join there to finish it off. Now we'll continue working with half double crochets throughout the duration of our band, but we're going to work our stitches in a different place. So rather than work in the top part of the stitch or that V, what we're normally used to create a different texture, almost like a sideways ribbing, if you will, we're going to work in the back bar only. So to find the back bar, you'll just need to flip your work over, and when you do that, you see how there's a V right there? So there's this V that's kind of facing this way where the point is over here by my hook. And then when I flip it down, there's another V, but it's pointing at this finger. Well, that bar right here, that's what they call the back bar, and we're going to work our stitches there. When we do that, what happens is our V from the top part is forced down, and so this is going to be visible from the side of our project, and it's going to make up the band. So locate your first half double crochet stitch and fold everything over, find your back bar, and half double crochet. It's going to take a few stitches and a few rows for you to really see the texture, but once you work 1 in the back bar, it will sort of naturally want to fold down, so it's a little bit easier to find the next one from there. And the repeat for this round is to make 1 half double crochet in the back bar only of every single stitch. Now once you've made it to the end of that round, you'll really start to see that little braided edge showing. That's what we're going for here. Now since we did not chain 2, we're actually going to work in a spiral. So rather than chain 2 at the beginning and join with the slip stitch and all of that, which will break up our pattern, we're going to continue with the spiral. So here I've reached the end of my round. I know that because I can see the start of it right here. Now you'll want to continue with this repeat until your band measures about 2.5 inches. So I'll start my measurement right here at this very first round of the band, and when it measures about 2.5 inches, that's when I'll start to wrap things up. Now this is also the place where you can make some modifications. If you want to have a slouchy hat, for example, you might want to work this pattern for say 4 inches for the band, or if you just need a little extra length, then this is the time and the place to do that. Just add a little bit extra, 1 or 2 rounds, whatever you need. And of course, try the hat on as you go so you know how much to add. Now go ahead and finish up your band. We'll have one final round to finish things up so that we keep our band pattern consistent, and we'll have a look at that next. Now once you've worked that repeat several times, your band should look something like this. And before we wrap it up, we need to do one more round to clean up the end. See, because we have our half double crochets, they're not turned like the rest, this looks a little different. One way that we can fix that is to work single crochets in the back bar only. So I'll just find my next stitch, work a single crochet, and that is going to pull this final round down so that it looks like the rest, but not add so much height there that it looks a little different. You can also use this technique with a slip stitch if you prefer. But for me, slip stitches are typically a little tighter, and so when you're working those along the bottom edge of a hat, something that you want to be a little stretchy, that can present an issue. So I find it safe to work single crochets for this particular issue. Then once you've made it to the end of your round, we can go ahead and trim ourselves a tail. So leave it about 6 to 8 inches or so. That should be plenty to weave it in. And then I'll find my next single crochet, stick my hook under both loops of that V, and I'm slip stitching here. Then I can just pull that tail through the loop to secure it up. And now I just need to weave in the ends. We have our tail here that we'll weave in. We also have that little hole up at the top that we're going to fix next. So to close up the hole in the center, you'll want to thread your tail on a darning needle. And then run the tail around the circle, just underneath those stitches. I'm catching it in between, so you can't see it on the opposite side there. You want to make sure to go all the way around at least once. And when you do that, you can simply pull and it'll close up that ring. Now to keep things secure so it doesn't come back out, I like to work my tail around the ring again. Now while we have it turned inside out, I'll go ahead and weave in this end here from our band. I like to do my best to weave it under a row of stitches. So right at the base of the stitch, working that through in one direction, and then coming back and working in that opposite direction. Do this as many times as you can. 3 or 4 times is usually enough. Having the sequins on this yarn really does help the ends to stay woven in. But with this being a hat, it's going to get some stretch. You want to make sure these ends don't work themselves back out. And then our hat is complete.